The cafeteria at Indiana Youth Center had a rhythm .200 men. Metal trays on metal tables. Forks scraping plate. Guard behind plexiglass watching screens. Conversations kept low. Laughter that never lasted too long. You learned a rhythm or you didn't survive. And on Tuesday, March 16th, 1993, that rhythm stopped. That IT didn't shatter. It just ended, like someone had cut the audio wire to the room. Mike Tyson sat alone at a table near the east wall. He'd been in 3 months. Kept his head down. Did his time. Read his books. Ate his meals in silence. The kind of silence that wasn't weakness. It was something else. Something the lifers recognized, but the young ones didn't. Marcus Webb didn't recognize it. Webb ran C Block. 34 years old. Life without parole. Respected. Connected. The kind of man who controlled rec time, controlled commissary, controlled who got touched and who got protected. He'd built his reputation over 9 years inside. Brick by brick. Body by body. And every man in that room knew what was about to happen when Webb stood up from his table, tray in hand, and started walking toward Tyson. The guards saw it too. 3 of them leaned closer to their monitors. One reached for his radio. The voice that came through stopped him cold. Let it play out. Captain's orders. Webb reached Tyson's table, set his tray down across from him, sat down without asking, without invitation, without permission. Tyson didn't look up from his food, and that's when the forks stopped scraping. Marcus Webb had prepared for this moment for 6 weeks. Not physically. He was already in shape. Stayed sharp. Had to. But mentally. Psychologically. Because this wasn't about fighting Mike Tyson. Nobody was stupid enough to think they could beat Mike Tyson in a fight. Not even inside. Not even here where there were no referees, no rules, no 10 counts. This was about order. Prison had a code. Didn't matter who you were on the outside. Didn't matter how much money you had, how famous you were, what your face looked like on a poster. Inside these walls, you were a number. And numbers had ranks. And ranks had rules. When Tyson first arrived, the guards walked him through processing differently. Kept him separate. Protected him like he was made of glass. Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, being escorted through intake like a witness in protective custody. And when they finally brought him out, Webb expected arrogance. Attitude, the kind of celebrity entitlement that got men hurt fast. But Tyson was quiet. That he took his cell block assignment, took his bunk, took his meals, read books about war and philosophy, barely spoke to anyone, didn't ask for special treatment, didn't demand respect, didn't even make eye contact unless someone spoke to him first. And that was the problem, because respect inside wasn't given. It was taken, or earned, or fought for. You didn't get to exist in the space between. You couldn't just be quiet and expect the world to let you stay that way. S.O. Webb made his decision. Not out of hatred, not even out of anger, out of necessity. That if he didn't test Tyson, someone else would. Some young kid trying to make a name. Some fool who didn't understand the difference between opportunity and suicide. And if someone else did it first, Webb's position weakened. His protection eroded. The carefully constructed hierarchy he'd built would crack. Better to control the moment than let the moment control you. He'd chosen lunch. Public. Visible. 200 witnesses. Cameras recording. This needed to be seen. This needed to be remembered. Webb sat across from Tyson and waited. Tyson chewed his food slowly. Methodically. Like he was alone. Like Webb wasn't even there. 30 seconds passed. The cafeteria was silent now. Completely silent. 200 men holding their breath. Watching. Waiting. Webb cleared his throat. Tyson cut another piece of protein loaf with the edge of his plastic fork. The motion was precise. Controlled. Webb leaned forward slightly. You know who I am? Tyson's jaw moved. Chewing. Swallowing. He reached for his cup of water. Drank. Set it down. He still hadn't looked up. Webb felt something tighten in his chest. I'm talking to you. Tyson's hand moved to his napkin. He wiped his mouth. Folded the napkin. Placed it beside his tray. Every movement deliberate. Every gesture complete. Then he raised his head. And Marcus Webb understood why the guards had been told to let it play out. There are moments in life where you see something that rewrites everything you thought you understood about the world. For Marcus Webb, this was that moment. Tyson's eyes weren't angry. They weren't hostile. They weren't even cold. They were empty. Not empty like boredom. Not empty like indifference. Empty like a room where something terrible had happened and nobody had cleaned it up yet. Empty like a well that goes down farther than light can reach. Webb had looked into the eyes of killers before. He was one himself. He knew what violence looked like when it lived inside someone permanently. But this was different. Tyson looked at him the way you look at a stain on a wall. Something that existed. Something that registered. But something that required no emotional response whatsoever. And no curiosity. No judgment. No interest. Just observation. Webb's mouth went dry. He'd planned this. He'd thought it through. He was going to sit here, assert dominance, make it clear that celebrity didn't mean hierarchy, and walk away with his status reinforced. But now, sitting across from Tyson, he realized something horrifying. Tyson didn't care. Not about status. Not about hierarchy. Not about Webb's reputation or his 9 years of control or the 200 men watching this happen. Tyson existed in a different dimension of violence. A place where Webb's carefully constructed world was irrelevant. A child's game played with toys that broke too easily. And somehow, without saying a single word, Tyson made Webb feel it. The air felt heavy. Webb's hands were on the table. He noticed they weren't steady. Just a tremor, barely visible. But there, he pulled them back into his lap. 60 seconds had passed. Tyson hadn't blinked. Not once. Webb tried to speak. His throat wouldn't cooperate. He swallowed. Tried again. You think you're special. It came out weaker than he wanted. Not a statement. Almost a question. Tyson's expression didn't change. He just kept looking. His breathing was even. Slow. Like he was resting. Like this was meditation. But his eyes... Webb had been stabbed once. 3 years ago. Sharpened toothbrush to the ribcage during yard time. He remembered the sensation. Not the pain. That came later. But the moment the blade went in, the feeling of something foreign entering your body. Something that didn't belong. Something that would change you permanently. Looking into Tyson's eyes felt like that. Like something inside Webb was being touched, examined, evaluated, and found lacking. In the guard station, Officer Dennis Holt watched Monitor 4 with his hand frozen over the radio. He's not moving. Another guard whispered beside him. Neither of them are. How long has it been? Holt checked the timestamp. 90 seconds. The cafeteria looked like a photograph. 200 men in various stages of suspended motion. Some with forks halfway to their mouths. Some turned in their seats. All of them staring at table 17, T. Webb, who'd gone completely rigid, T. Tyson, who sat like a statue made of something heavier than stone. Should we? Captain said no. But if equals, that's the order. On the monitor, something changed. Webb's shoulders dropped. Just slightly. Just enough. Jesus, Holt breathed. He's breaking. Marcus Webb had built his entire adult life on the principle that fear was a tool. You used it. You controlled it. You made other men feel it so they understood where you stood in relation to them. But sitting across from Mike Tyson, Webb learned something new. There were levels to fear. There was the fear of pain. He'd used that. Given it. Taken it. There was the fear of death. He lived with that. Accepted it. Used it to sharpen himself. But this was different. This was the fear of insignificance. The fear that everything you'd built meant nothing. That all your violence was just theater. That your reputation was just noise. That you were a child playing at being dangerous while something truly dangerous watched you play. Webb's hands started shaking. He pulled them off the table. Clenched them in his lap. But he could feel it spreading. Up his arms. Into his chest. His throat. Tyson still hadn't blinked. The stare wasn't aggressive. That was the worst part. There was no malice in it. No hatred. No personal investment whatsoever. Tyson was just waiting, not waiting for Webb to do something. Waiting for Webb to understand something. Webb tried to look away. Couldn't. His eyes were locked. Trap point 2 minutes. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Webb knew he had to end this. Had to say something. Do something. Stand up. Walk away. Reassert himself. But his body wouldn't respond. Because his body had figured out something. His mind was still resisting. That if he moved wrong, if he said the wrong thing, if he made any gesture that Tyson interpreted as a threat, the cameras would record what happened next. The guards would watch, and Marcus Webb would learn what it felt like when real violence decided you didn't deserve to exist anymore. Not the kind of violence that happened in prison yards. Not knife violence or gang violence. The other kind, the kind Tyson had spent his whole life perfecting. The kind that didn't need a ring or a referee. The kind that happened in the space between heartbeats. The kind that ended things permanently. Webb felt his bladder loosen. Not completely. Just enough to know it was possible. Just enough to feel the edge of that humiliation approaching. His breath came shorter. 3 minutes. Then Tyson moved. It wasn't fast. It wasn't aggressive. He just reached forward, slowly, and picked up his cup of water. Brought it to his lips. Drank. He set the cup down. The sound of plastic touching table was the loudest thing in the room. Tyson leaned back slightly, crossed his arms, and kept looking. That's when Webb understood. Tyson wasn't going to touch him. He wasn't going to speak to him. He wasn't going to do anything. He was just going to sit there and look at him until Webb made the choice himself, until Webb decided whether he wanted to stay or leave. And that choice, that simple, terrible choice, was the whole fight. Tyson had already won. He'd won the moment Webb sat down. Maybe before that. Maybe the moment Webb decided to walk across the cafeteria. Because Tyson didn't play those games. Tyson was the game. And Webb had just learned the rules. Marcus Webb stood up. He didn't announce it. Didn't make a speech. Didn't try to save face. He just stood. Picked up his tray. And walked back to his table. His legs felt distant. Like they belonged to someone else. The walk across the cafeteria took 1,000 years. He could feel every eye on him. Every man in that room watching his back. Watching his posture. Reading what had just happened. Rewriting who Marcus Webb was in their minds. Updating the hierarchy. He sat down at his original table. His hands were still shaking. Behind the plexiglass, the guards exhaled. Table 17, Mike Tyson picked up his fork and continued eating. Like nothing had happened. Like Webb had never been there. Like the last 3 minutes were just another moment in another day. The rhythm of the cafeteria didn't return. Not that day. The fork scraped plates again, but quieter. Conversations resumed, but careful. Laughter didn't come back at all, because every man in that room had just learned something. Violence wasn't about movement. It wasn't about muscle or speed or even anger. It was about presence. And Mike Tyson's presence didn't need to raise its voice. It didn't need to make threats. It didn't need to move. It just needed to exist. And that existence was enough to rewrite the rules, to change the hierarchy, to make grown men with life sentences understand that there were levels they hadn't reached. Levels they would never reach. 3 days later, Marcus Webb requested a transfer to B Block. The administration approved it without question. Nobody asked why. Nobody needed to. Webb served the rest of his sentence quietly. Kept his head down. Stayed out of politics. The reputation he'd built over 9 years dissolved in those 3 minutes at table 17. But he was alive. In an Indiana youth center, in March of 1993, that counted as winning. Mike Tyson finished his sentence 14 months later. Walked out of prison the same way he'd walked in. Quiet. Controlled. Carrying the weight of something the rest of the world couldn't see. Years later, a reporter asked Webb about that day. About what happened. About what Tyson said to him. Webb looked at the reporter for a long time. Then he answered. He didn't say anything. That's what you don't understand. He didn't have to. The reporter pressed. But what did you feel? Webb's hand was steady now. Years of distance. Years of processing. But his answer came slow. I felt like I was already dead, and he was deciding whether or not to make it official. The reporter wrote it down, published it. The quote went viral, but nobody who read it understood what Webb meant. Not really. You had to be there. You had to sit across from Mike Tyson and look into those eyes and feel what it was like when violence looked back at you and saw nothing worth destroying. Just something worth teaching. The cafeteria at Indiana Youth Center still runs on rhythm. Men eat. Guards watch. Time passes, but table 17, near the east wall, stays empty most days. Not because of a rule. Not because anyone says so. Just because some places hold weight, and some men change the gravity of a room just by sitting in it. And some lessons don't need words. They just need 3 minutes and a stare that doesn't blink.